Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity. I'm here to talk about the two newest short treks and my continued covering on the thoughts on short treks. I kind of forgot all about that these were coming. I was looking forward to these. So these are two new short treks just dropped, two animated shorts that are both animated called The Girl Who Made the Stars and Ephraim and Dot. I believe that's how you pronounce it. If it isn't, I don't really care. Anyway, I'm here to talk about the two newest short treks, and I was really looking forward to these. They taste that they're gonna have some animated Star Trek shows coming out. We're gonna get Lower Decks, which is a Rick and Morty esque comedy, mature comedy, I would say, in the same sort of vein as Rick and Morty. It's done by some of the same people who worked on Rick and Morty. And we're also going to get a animated series on Nickelodeon geared towards children. I expect that to be more like sort of the action animated shows I used to watch as a kid, like the X-Men and whatnot, and kind of like the Star Wars animated shows are. So these two short treks were not in neither of those veins. It wasn't a mature Rick and Morty-esque comedy, nor were they Nickelodeon action type animated shows. They were more in the vein of Pixar, I would say. Both of these shorts reminded me a lot of Pixar shorts, and I gotta say, I think they both did a really good job at having that feel. I would, if I had any kids, I would probably show this to them. I have I know people with kids, so I might, if I'm have to babysit or something, I might show them these because I think they work very well. Then I think they work better than a lot of crap that's made for kids, like these crappy Minions movie or whatever the hell they are. I actually would say these hold more artistic value, and I would put them in the same vein as Pixar shorts. Now, of course, it's not quite as good as Pixar because Pixar is like top of the line. It's obvious that they're emulating him, and I think they do a good job. To be fair, it doesn't come off as just a Pixar wannabe like some of these really bad movies do. Now, so let me talk about The Girl Who Made the Stars. This is my least favorite one out of the two. I thought it was okay. Like, I think the way the characters behaved, the way the little girl behaved was really believable. And I think it was well written and well acted. But it wasn't really about Star Trek, was it? Not really. And the only connection to Star Trek is they show Michael Burnham as a young little girl, and her dad tells her a bedtime story. That's our only Star Trek connection. I have no desire to see Michael Burnham as a little girl hearing a bedtime story. I'm sorry, but I don't. I have no interest, desire in that whatsoever. And then so the rest of it is, I'm just going to say, a poor man's version or poor woman's version, if you prefer, of Moana. It's basically trying to be Moana, but it's not as good. And that's all I gotta say about that, because and I don't even know, like, Moana was actually based off of a lot of real life cultural stories and myths. I don't think, if I was a betting man, I would say that this one was not, but I could be wrong about that. Maybe this totally is based off of some African myths. But if I were to guess, I would say no. And I don't really care. Like, I don't like. I don't know. It's just like, I think Moana did this much better, and the way the story did it is supposed to be a Star Trek short, but really it's a girl who just so happens to be a character from a Star Trek show hearing a bedtime story, which is some African myth. And it's fine. Like, as I said, I think it works as a kids short. Like I would show it to some kids if I was babysitting and I want them to get off my back for a while. I think it's I think it's well created and it's interesting enough. As I said, it's well written. The dialogue, the story's really punchy, but it doesn't really bring anything to it. And most of all, as a Star Trek fan, because it marketed itself as a Star Trek short and it's profiting and gaining from the Star Trek brand, it doesn't really do anything enough to feel like it deserves that brand. It's just using it to, do something totally different. So, am I going to give this a rating between 1 to 10? I think I'll give it a 7, actually, because it's on its own. It's actually decent. As I said, well acted, well put together, interesting enough. I just personally not very interested in it. Anyway, so let me talk about the other one, Ephraim or however you pronounce it, and Dot. I like this one better. I enjoyed this one. This, to me, felt a lot more like sort of a Pixar short. Not a movie, but those shorts that they often have before the movie, where there's like, yeah, it's your classic cartoon gag where you have, two funny looking cartoon characters chasing each other. I mean, this has been going on since the days of Tom and Jerry, but Pixar sort of perfected it and gave it in a more sort of artistic vibe to it, and of course showcased really good animation. And I think this one's in the same vein of that. As I said, I think it actually it works for what it is. It pulls it off very well. Now, of course, there's a lot of it's they add in a lot of Star Trek nostalgia. It's like the Pixar kind of short where there's two funny things chasing each other, plus Star Trek nostalgia. Like it just so happens to be on the Enterprise, and you just so happen to see a lot of events from the original series, so you get a lot of callbacks. And honestly, I think this is less cheap than what they did on Discovery by having, there's Spock, there's Sarek, there's a Tribble, there's Harry Mudd, let's mention this, let's mention the Talos 4, remember that, Like, to me, this is more excusable than that because it's not taking itself seriously. It is a funny cartoon aimed towards children, so if they want to just throw in like Abraham Lincoln floating in space, I get a kick out of that. and they were lying, and they show Khan in bed, and they show Sulu with the sword, and then the Doomsday Machine and stuff like that. That's fine. I think it deserved. I think it earned the right to have a lot of pointless nostalgia because it's just a silly cartoon, and it's an effective silly cartoon. It really works for what it is. It's the animation works between these two characters, and how the tardigrade lays the eggs, and that little robot thing he keeps kicking off the shit doesn't understand that the tardigrade just wants to be near the eggs. I suppose they're saying they're in a part of the engine room that's like they're inside the core, maybe where humans couldn't go, so that's why there's no people there, if I understand it correctly. And that's why you just got this stupid little robot thingy, which I think they mentioned they showed these little robot thingies at the end of Discovery Season 2. I don't remember that, but I thought it was very effective. And although they kind of, if I was gonna, you could be a huge nerd, and I'm sure some people will, and be like, excuse me, but they showed Khan first, and then they showed Sulu going crazy with the sword, but Naked Gun actually came out before Naked Gun. Naked Time actually came out before Space Seed. I don't care. It's a cartoon. It's a silly cartoon. So it doesn't really need to stick to canon. But is it suggesting that the tardigrade is kind of traveling through time? Because it's they jump through a lot. Especially they jump all the way from original series era to the movies. Like that's like 20 years or something. And they didn't so I don't know. I don't know. It's a silly cartoon, but I don't know. And then it went all the way to, because then it went right through all these events, and then how's time moving? That's what I was wondering, how, because their time was able to slow down right before the Enterprise blew up, and of course, this reference Star Trek 3. You saw the cloaked ship; they were over the Genesis planet, um, and that's a nice. It reminds me of like these short novels that were kind of, there was a series of short novels written that were similar, that would take place in between the events, and be about totally different characters, and be like, oh, there's actually this, little tardigrade creature running around being attacked by this robot on the Enterprise. I liked it. I think it worked. So I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. Actually, retroactively, I might change my rating for Girl Who Made the Stars to a 6. I think 7's too high. But anyway, I'll give this one an 8. This is, I don't know if I'd say by far, but very clearly the best out of these short treks so far. Very clearly to me. The first one was boring when they're trapped in the elevator. The comedy one with the triples was a disgrace. They tried to be funny, it wasn't really funny, and they just fucked canon with the triples, which pissed me the fuck off. And the third one with Pike, I mean, that was so predictable. Ooh, this is a test. And it was seemed kind of pointless. As I said, the other animated one was decent, but not really Star Trek. So this is the clear best one. I said I was looking forward to the animated ones the most, and I think I was actually justified in feeling that way, because I think they have been the best so far. Which, to be fair, is not a very high bar, because these short treks have not been very good. But I think I think these work as shorts. They feel like a short film, like those Pixar shorts films that you would show. Where the other short treks don't, like the one with Pike, it didn't feel like an actual short film. It felt pointless. And the one with the triples is like they're trying to cram too much into a short amount of time, and it just felt like I was missing a lot. And the first one was just like a scene from an episode that was boring. And so these ones, particularly the second one, are the ones that felt like short films to me. Like they deserved to be made. Like there was actually a point to have as short versions of Trek. Anyway, and I mean, it didn't blow me away. It wasn't spectacular, but I enjoyed it. I thought it really worked for what it set out to do. I thought it was crafted very well. It reminded me of the Pixar films. And do you know that this episode, the Ephraim and Dot, was actually directed by Michael Giacchino, which I just found that that's very interesting. If you don't know who he is, he's a famous composer who does the music for a lot of movies. I know him from Lost. He's attached to J.J. Abrams and that, and does a lot of this stuff. And I absolutely love his work on Lost. I think is some of the best ever. Of course, he's won Oscars for doing it. He's done animated movies like Up, and so for him to transition from that to doing this animated short, which is very much in the vein as the Pixar, makes sense. And it's interesting that he actually directed it. So I don't even think he did the music for it. But anyway, that is it for my thoughts on short treks. Thanks so much for watching. I will return next month for the next short treks, which is about, from the previews, looks like two young girls in a boarding school, but apparently it's supposed to be a precursor to Picard somehow. I don't know. I'm kind of dubious about this one, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Check out my channel. I'm going to cover The Expanse. I'm going to watch the shit out of The Expanse tomorrow. I am so excited for The Expanse. Oh my god, let me tell you. So I'm going to do a lot of Expanse videos coming up, and finishing my coverage of Mr. Robot. So check out my channel for all that. See you guys later.